I will be presenting on a comparative model for understanding human sexuality, proximity, and sociosexual preferences in female bonobo relationships. And this presentation is actually an adaptation of a previous presentation I did at UW-Milwaukee's Anthropology Student Union annual research colloquium that I just did a couple weeks ago. So, bonobos and chimpanzees are equally humans' closest living relatives, and this is why we're so often interested in studying them and learning more about them in order to learn more about our evolutionary past. Both bonobos and chimpanzees are male philopatric and female dispersal, and this pretty much means that it is the males who remain in the group for life, whereas the females are the ones who disperse between groups and move between groups at different stages in their life. Fission fusion grouping patterns are also observed in bonobos, chimpanzees, and humans. And this pretty much just means that members of the community, break up into small subgroups or parties of different sizes, and then they come back together at different times throughout their life. Female bonobos are the perfect model for investigating different functions of sexual behavior, given that all adult females engage in same-sex sexual behavior that occur at similar higher rates as copulations. On the other hand, same-sex sexual interactions among male bonobos is actually quite rare. And contrary to what many people once believed, studies have found that female-male pair bonds are weak and are actually not responsible for the cooperation in bonobos. Instead, the closest bonds among unrelated individuals are maintained between female bonobos. So now we have this question as to why do we observe such cooperation among female bonobos? And female bonobos cooperate in a large range of contexts, from co-feeding and sharing access to food, to supporting each other in collisionary aggression directed against males. And there's a lot of discussion on the advantages of such high cooperation. The immediate advantage is females having control over food resources that are important for their reproductive success. Another advantage is the reduction of male agonism and sexual coercion, which are often seen in female dispersal species like chimpanzees, but are not observed in bonobos, or not as often observed in bonobos. And the ultimate advantage is an earlier age of first reproduction, which increases their lifetime reproductive success. So going a little more into what I'm looking at, female preferences, there have been studies that show slightly different results. Some studies have shown that female bonobos do not restrict same-sex sexual interactions to preferred partners, but rather they use sexual interactions flexibly, and this is maybe as a way to increase cooperation within the group. On the other hand, some studies have shown that female bonobos do have preferences. So one study found that females had flexible proximity and GG rubbing preferences, but that females maintain stable preferred grooming partners. However, most studies agree that female bonobos prefer interactions with females to males, despite being genetically unrelated to one another. You might be wondering, what does this have to do with human sexuality? Well, understandings of gender and sexuality in humans can shift based on changing cultural perspectives, along with newer scientific perspectives. Historically, non-heterosexual behavior in humans has been pathologized. Homosexuality was included in the DSM-1 in 1952. After about 20 years and years of protests in the gay rights movement, it was eventually removed in 1973 from the DSM-2. So my aim is that by looking at bonobo sexuality, especially same-sex interactions among bonobos, I can use bonobos as a comparative model to understand human sexuality. So this leads me to my research questions that I aim to answer. Do female bonobos exhibit a preference to spend time in proximity to other female bonobos relative to males? And do these proximity preferences reflect preferences in sexual and social relationships? And again, I aim to examine these preferences in female bonobos to gain a broader understanding of same-sex sexuality in humans. The data that I'm using for my research was previously collected by Dr. Rodriguez, who is my advisor for my independent study this semester. The data was collected at Columbus Zoo in Ohio from June 2013 through August 2013. Focal animal sampling was used to collect the data, and this pretty much just means that one bonobo was observed for 30 minutes, with 2-minute instantaneous recording of their activity and their nearest neighbors. The data that was collected in 2013 by Dr. Rodriguez was part of a comparative study on captive chimpanzees and bonobos. In this personal independent study, I have been working on formatting and analyzing this data to answer some of my own research questions. For this research, I have been doing social network analysis with SocialProg. I've been using Mandel tests to test the correlation between two matrices. So in this case, I'm using Mandel tests to test correlation between proximity and various sexual and social behaviors. So regarding results for my first question, results have shown that there is no significant difference in proximity between and within sexes. So if you look at the sociogram here, the pink lines represent female-female proximity, The blue lines represent male-male proximity, and the red lines represent female-male proximity. And the thickness of the line just pretty much represents the strength. So the thicker the line, the more instances that those two individuals were in close proximity to one another. So when analyzing proximity, there was no significant difference in proximity between and within sexes. So female-female and male-male relationships were observed at approximately the same rate as female-male interactions. Looking at the results from our second question, when analyzing the correlation between proximity and other social and sexual behaviors, it was found that all behaviors measured, GG rubbing, grooming, huddling, play, and agonism, were all correlated with proximity. Grooming, huddling, play, and agonism were found to be perfectly correlated with proximity, while GG rubbing was found to be significantly correlated with proximity. So a quick summary of the things I have found so far. There was no difference in proximity between or within sexes. All sociosexual behaviors that were measured were found to be correlated to proximity. And observing these rates of same-sex sexual proximity in female bonobos reveals a possibility for more flexibility in human sexuality. And in the next few weeks of the semester, I will continue to run more tests on these datasets to draw more conclusions about preferences and the possibility of certain behaviors predicting other behaviors.